Erin's book called Eva Langhorne. This is the first day of the new millennium, the first of all firsts for me, Eva Langhorne. I tried so many things before, but now is the test. I can hear my footsteps in the PowerPoint of the spreadsheet. It is funny, I am walking on a beach, and it took me so long to find myself on here. I mean, it's like I did a Google search on the internet, and my typing was misspelled or something funny like that. I think I shall have a cigarette break instead of crying, because I can't get the microphone to work in the comedy club I call life. Chapter 1, The Bush Affect. It was noon on the 1st of May, 2006. I was thinking to myself that it would be better to find a man who could understand me than someone who could not. Obviously, it might prove to be a better thing that one could communicate lightheartedly with a companion rather than suffer in the realm of miscommunication. I had found out recently I was dying of cancer. Well, not yet, but it was a fact that even if I quit smoking on that day, the 10 years plus that I had been smoking wasn't going to be a race for my lungs, even after years of not smoking. Of course, the lungs would rejuvenate themselves, but cancer doesn't always show right away. It stays dormant in the body and pops up just when life looks pretty damn good. Just when finally I would have gotten my shit together, when finally I was settled in my community on the PTA board with my 2.5 children and a dog, and when I was having the best sex of my life, that's when the cancer was going to appear. I had already begun the process of quitting smoking by this time. It certainly was a process. I wasn't going to wake up one morning and never smoke again. I had bought the patch, the gum, the lozenges, and even joined a support group. I had found out from a doctor that I could smoke on the patch and wouldn't die of a heart attack. So I had been juiced up on nicotine and was beginning to go manic. I couldn't take Zyban because I had a history of eating disorders and already was on an antidepressant called Zoloft. Going off the antidepressants in the months prior, I had gone into a minor but painful depression and was putting myself back on meds that had been sitting in my drawer for months unused. Little did I know at the time, but I would wind up getting extremely high from the Zoloft once I had started taking it again, and would suffer from periodic mood swings that left me insomniatic but extremely creative. I thought I was charming on this day in May. I had just run into an old flame at the bagel shop and talked incessantly to him about my plans for the future. I was frenetic. I had conjured up the idea of becoming a doctor and a rock star at the same time, and thought that he was very interested in being my friend, since I was going to be so rich and influential one day. Right now, though, at the present time on the 1st of May, I was thinking only of playing guitar. I amazed myself with key changes and bells I heard in my head when I sang tunes of Patti Smith. She howled like a wolf in her songs, and that was what I wanted to be like when I sang. She sang of her father dying in New England. That's what I heard anyway. And I thought of my misadventures in college in New England. I wanted to write songs that spoke to common people across America and made them think of their youth. because that was where it was at, the youth. Like Bruce Springsteen in the streets of Freehold, New Jersey, prancing around like a vagabond, bohemian like at the same time, all the while being the jock of the stage. A rock star. Yeah, I certainly knew how to party like one. A rock star. But now I wanted to be one, rolling like a stone on the path that walked every day of this goddamn life. I was schizoaffective and I had a problem with it. She walked with movement of a gray sow, cooing while she stepped. Hoot hoot, she purred, and the cats followed. Every hip star on the block wanted to be like her, gifted and crazy like, but no one wanted to be her friend. Hoot hoot, she purred, and the cats followed. But with the slightest misgiving, she allowed herself to breathe, and there she went silently wrong. Thinking only for a moment that she was invincible, she jumped. But it was that last moment too late, and she was gone forever. The first time I had a manic episode, I couldn't even relate. I didn't know what it was. I didn't even know I was having one. Everyone's heard of a panic attack and the symptoms of one, but when I was manic, everyone just thought I was an asshole. It was my personality. It was my temperament. It was my effervescent sunshine of a being that only later I would manifest into rock and roll. But the first time I had a manic episode certainly wasn't May 2006. It was more like 1986. But then it was before ADHD, before OCD, and definitely without a doubt before Ritalin ever became the popular drug of choice for overactive adolescents. I can't tell you about the first distinct time that mania was a part of my life because I can't remember. I will tell you, I used to think that I was an angel, sent from above to replace the child that was dead in my mother's womb. That I used to be a ballerina in heaven, and that the world stopped while I was asleep. The world, without a doubt, revolved around me because people existed for my amusement. It was probably that attitude which still ostracizes me to this day from most people, save for drug addicts or crazies. And it is one such crazy that I found in Ryan Lowenthal. But he is another story that I will gladly let wait until the next chapter. Me, on the other hand, am a crazy that is heavily medicated on the highest dosage the FDA regulates for the newest antipsychotic. I pride myself on knowing that it is true you could never tell that I am mentally ill unless I tell you. And that is why I am writing this memoir to end now. After years in the limelight, it is only fitting that I come out with a tell-all book for the fans that I do have today. But in the spring 2006, it all began for me in my career. I had written a year earlier a song about my illness. And strangely, in the time where Tom Cruise is telling off Brooke Shields for taking antidepressants, and then having babies almost born exactly the same time in the same hospital, after being the it actor model in the 80s first, my song sold millions. My song sold millions, and I was in a bagel shop talking about becoming a doctor to my ex-lover. But New York City was just like that, and that is what I loved about it. I had a hit song on the Contemporaries chart, but I was still convinced I needed to go to Columbia to get my MD to prescribe pills to other crazies, so less of them turned out like Ryan. Oh God, Ryan. Well, let me see. I suppose I could open a Budweiser and get right down to business. It's time to tell you about Ryan and let my memoir begin. Chapter 2, The Poet in All of Us. Ryan was my friend. I loved him, though, and wanted to know him in a special way. We were in high school, and he was a smart guy. Everyone knew him as a charming but troubled guy. He manipulated his way in college, being intelligent enough to get a near-perfect score on his SATs while nearly failing his courses. He was a heroin addict, and I would have become one too if he'd let me. I don't know the story of how it happened that he became an addict. He wrote me a poem about it. Green lights and red speeding, about the distinction of man who runs like a moon, and yellow, slowly circling my veins, shot up on the side of a river flowing, and through is how I know you. He wrote countless plays in college, but I know it hurt him when his peers criticized his work after the professor made the students share with each other. He was sensitive, very beautiful in his soul he was. I fancied myself a poet too, and we stayed up smoking blunts of marijuana together one summer, reading our poetry to each other. He could be wicked as well, so troubled that he was. He once told me that there were ghosts in the back of my car, and that he could see them even when I could not. I started hearing voices not long after, since I had had an acid trip only months previous. Still, though, I loved him, and I thought we could communicate so well that we didn't have to speak aloud, but only read each other's thoughts. He was my Romeo, and in fact, I tried climbing in his window thinking I was Juliet. I got the scenario backwards, but that is what happened. He called my parents and they took me to a hospital. I wish someone had taken Ryan to the hospital. Instead, I took him to a bus station and paid for his ticket out of my college town up north after one trip to visit me. I wanted to kiss him, but he didn't like me that way, so I told him I was gay. Again, I got the scenario wrong. And he had to leave immediately. He left willingly, I thought. And I never made another attempt to speak with him again. His father called me a few months later and asked if I thought he had joined a cult. I told him that maybe he was a cult leader, and then his father said no one knew where he was. I got off the phone and stared at my wall, listening to the hum of the heater, and was all alone. 2 years later, I got the call. "Eva, it's Glenn. Ryan's dead." She spoke and my jaw dropped. "What?" I gasped. "He's been dead for a long time. Guess what? You won't believe it. He jumped in front of a subway train, and they couldn't identify the body." She said this, and I couldn't listen. "His teeth." He trailed off, and I couldn't process it. The words Glenn spoke out loud were too hysterical to comprehend, and I saw my first excuse to pity myself. I went to a potluck dinner right after I heard the news, stole a bottle of rum out of the host's liquor cabinet, got drunk in a field, and kissed a local musician. I told him how Ryan was an addict, how I never did the stuff, and he told me he'd die anyway, if not from a train, then from the drug. I said I was a horrible person for kicking him out of my dorm room, and he said Ryan needed to get the hell out of my space, and that I was smart for it. I let the musician believe that he was right, but I knew I'd be punished for dismissing my friend. Now all I have is his poetry and visions of him in my head. I still get chills when I think of the ghosts, and sometimes I think I hear them and damn afraid to look behind me. Chapter 3, If Not You, Then Me.